Concerns are growing about the living conditions on board an American aircraft carrier in the Middle East. The USS Abraham Lincoln has been in the region since January to support the U.S. war against Iran. The Lincoln has a crew of about 5,000 people. It's one of the largest aircraft carriers in the world, and the sailors on board haven't touched dry land in about 9 months. And now there's new reports coming to light suggesting they face poor conditions, including food shortages, plumbing issues, and reports of sailors attempting to jump overboard. The Trump administration has dismissed the reports, but there is now another vessel on its way to take the place of the Lincoln. Sean Henseler is a retired commander in the U.S. Navy, a former U.S. Navy intelligence officer, joins us from North Kingstown, Rhode Island this morning. So thank you so much for making the time. The USS Abraham Lincoln has now been at sea without stopping for, I believe, over 260 days. As someone who has been on lengthy deployments, I mean, over 200 days, can you give us a sense of what that must feel like?
Yes, I can. Thanks for having me, Eli. I mean, over 200 days is an inordinate amount of time, to be sure. I've made multiple combat deployments, and I can tell you that Operation Desert Storm, for example, being at sea and underway for close to 4.5 months without pulling into port takes a huge mental and physical toll on all of the officers and enlisted aboard the ship. It's a very strenuous duty, both on the flight deck, flying and planning and preparing for missions. And so I'm not surprised at all to hear that there are problems with this type of lengthy deployment.
Well, and let's talk a little more about those problems. There have been reports about food shortages, the care packages not being delivered, and then the mental conditions of the sailors that are serving. There's been reports of attempted suicides, multiple reports of sailors attempting to jump overboard and were stopped. What do those kind of reports suggest to you?
Yeah, it suggests to me that the Navy and our military did not plan for this. The Navy actually has what's called it's a plan. And the plan with the 11 carriers that we have assumes that some amount of those carriers are going to be in maintenance, some will be in what we call a workup phase, getting ready to deploy, and some will be deployed. And this plan rotates over 3 years optimally, but really it's more like 44 months. And so the fact that we've had this carrier on station for this long shows me, or it's a demonstration that the Navy really didn't plan for this, because pursuant to its own plan, a 7-month deployment would be normal or optimal. So going on 9 months at sea, and it's still going to take at least 2 months to get back from the Gulf to their home port in San Diego. This is way beyond normal. Unfortunately, the last carrier, the USS Gerald Ford, also did an 11-month deployment. So I think that these contingencies in Iran and Venezuela took folks a little bit by surprise and took us off plan.
Yeah, both those carriers have now kind of set their own records separately. I want to ask you about the president's comments in a moment, but talk to us about the importance of just those stopping in the ports. Like, what does that mean, and how does that kind of break up the monotony for this crew?
Yeah, it sure does. I mean, pulling into port is not just for the morale and mental health welfare for the crew, what we call R&R, but it's also to do some routine maintenance on the ship, resupply, et cetera. So a normal deployment, the ship would be at sea for, it could be a couple of months, and then it would pull into port, provide the sailors with, a week or so of an opportunity to kind of, take some time to regain their mental health and then get back after it. And so this is just, again, not normal at all. And it's having a very significant adverse effect, not only in the sailors and the crew, but also their families at home as well. And that runs completely counter to the way the U.S. Navy wants to do business. So
the president was talking to reporters a few days ago, and he was asked by one of them about this deployment, about complaints that it was going on too long. And his response was that, no, it's not nearly long enough. What is your response to the president's response?
Yeah, my response is that, first of all, I'm not surprised. It's the modus operandi for this president, this Secretary of Defense, and even this Secretary of the Navy. They're never going to admit that there's any type of problem or something that they hadn't planned for, or anything that would smack as adverse to the U.S. But the first thing you're taught as a naval officer is to take care of your sailors and to take care of their families. And so those types of comments to me run completely counter to what is ingrained in me as a 20-year naval officer and then another 15 years at the U.S. Naval War College. So again, not surprising, but it's almost unconscionable. It's just not the way it should be. Your sailors and their families come first and foremost.
I think part of the challenge for the crew of the Lincoln is that some of the ports they would stop in, well, they're basically now under combat operations because they're trying to keep up this blockade. There's worries of drone attacks and whatnot. So what can actually be done to help this crew that are still on the Lincoln and, as you say, could be there for another 2 months?
Yeah, well, there's a carrier on the way. So the George Washington is supposed to be on a Western Pacific deployment. And it's on the way now. I don't know that it's necessarily because of all of the problems and the press that was involved, but I think there's a relationship. And so getting another carrier out there as quickly as possible is the answer. If you're going to maintain that blockade and maintain the possibility of preparing for strikes, the carrier is going to have to be at sea. And so I don't think there's any other way other than replacing with another carrier. The ports that it would normally pull into, as you suggest, are under potential threat. And so I think the only answer really is to relieve it at sea. And even that's going to take, at least another month or so for the GW to get there and for them to turn over properly. And it's not just the aircraft carriers. There's also 3 ships alongside it that are part of the strike group. And now we've got the USS Boxer Amphibious Ready Group is going on about 5 months. So those ships that are out there as part of that Ready Group are also going to have to be replaced at some point.
What was the longest time you served without pulling into port, Sean?
I was trying to think of that before this interview. I know during Desert Storm, I think we were at sea for close to 4 months without a port call. And then post 9/11, we deployed off the coast of Afghanistan for that mission as well. It was probably about 3 to 3.5 months, again, without a port call. And I can tell you the stress that it takes both mentally and physically, you really don't sleep. And so that physical stress, I think, then adds to the mental stress. And listen, for an officer who's been, deployed multiple times, maybe they're better equipped to handle it. But young 18, 19, 20-year-old sailors, gone for the first time, this is very unusual.
Yeah.
And I can easily see how it would take this kind of toll.
I've been looking at the pictures of the very young sailors sitting in the mess hall, and it is very striking. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and perspective with us. That is former U.S. Navy intelligence officer Sean Henseler speaking to us.